afternoon and a warm. I'm Noshi Azami of MBA second semester, and I will be your host for the parallel session 1 of the National Interdisciplinary Online Students Conference organized by Raleigh Literary Society, AMU. The theme for this session is psychology. Sharing this session is just PhD to Medical College, Aligarh Muslim University. Her research was based on cognitive remediation of schizophrenic and depressive patients. She has more than 10 publications in reputed journals and has presented in more than 20 conferences. She has been associated with various organizations for telecounseling services like Mano and MHR, Indian Academy of Health Psychology, etc. Her research interests are clinical psychology, health psychology, counseling psychology, etc. We welcome you, ma'am. Let us begin with our presentations for the session. Let us begin with our presentations for the session. Before introducing the presenter, I want to reiterate, each presenter will be allotted 10 minutes for the presentation, which will then be followed by the remarks from the chair, after which I'll take questions from the audience. You can also write your questions in the chat box and they shall be asked to the presenter after the end of the session, at the end of their presentation. Our first presenter is Jasmine Belli from Sharda University, who will be presenting her paper titled Trauma, Memory and Postmemory, Self-Resilience, a Cure. Over to you. Let us move on to our next presenter. And okay, I think we can connect with Jasmine now. Jasmine, can you please unmute yourself?
Nosheen, has Jasmine joined the session? Like, is she there in the list?
Yes, ma'am. I'll just check that once again.
Nosheen, you may skip to the next participant till then.
Yes, sure. Let us move on to our next presenter. Our next presenter is Indradaman Tiwari and Nivedita Singh from Dr. Shakuntala Mishra National Rehabilitation University, who will be presenting their paper titled Ritual as an Instrument of Imparting Social Memory Content. Over to you.
हेलो टू ऑल। मैं इंद्रदमन तिवारी लखनऊ विश्वविद्यालय के विधि संकाय का शोध छात्र हूँ और इस कार्यक्रम में मैं अपनी को ऑथर निवेदिता सिंह जो कि डॉक्टर शकुंतला मिश्रा नेशनल रिहेबिलिटेशन यूनिवर्सिटी से LLM की छात्रा रही हैं, उनके साथ में ये पेपर मुझे प्रेजेंट करना है, रिचुअल एज एन इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ इम्पार्टिंग सोशल मेमोरी कंटेंट। अब मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. The dialectic of current social evolution underpins the significance of the topic covered in the provided article. On the one hand, generational continuity and the loss of responsibility for a large portion of the social media occur in modern society. The study of social memory is becoming more popular at the same time because it allows people to realize, change, and recreate their memories of the past while ignoring their social milieu and personalities. A phenomena that supports group identity in social memory. In this sense, a modern person needs ways to literally perceive social memory, preserve it, and pass it on the following generation. A ritual is regarded as being among the most significant verbal and non-verbal social memory transfer mechanisms that humanity has amazed. My paper studies phenomena that might bring the most personal aspect of social memory. An individual residing in the contemporary multicultural world must comprehend the significance and content of the social memory phenomena. Participating in communal ritual actions helps people identify more personally with a particular social group. As a result, through the process of social memory, a person gains assurance in the future and the significance of her or his genuine life. While modern society is becoming more ritualized, the process of globalization leads to the unification of rituals. People attempt to use historical knowledge to explain social interaction, regulating behavioral practices. Now I would like to come on theoretical framework. Memory issues have been researched over the entire history of philosophy. With the advent of sociology, social memory attended the stature of an ontological fact. The development of conceptual studies in the relevant field in the 20th century was abided by notion of collective and social memory at the end of 19th century. The numerous components of social memory are exposed while taking into account the investigations that have already been done on the topic. The idea of social memory transfer by means of cultural facilities belongs to art historian A. Warburg, who explained work of art as cultural descriptive symbols created in certain community and expressing their cultural identity. Sociological research of memory was carried out by M. Habermas, who theoretically explained the existence of both individual and collective types of memory. J. Essman contributed the idea of the memory informative content that is defined by the social and cultural framework. Contemporary scientists such as S. Klein and S. Nichols wrote, memory is at the heart of the way most people think about personal identity. Examining memories, Wayne Dick revealed them not as being ready-made reflections of the past, but as eclectic and selective reconstructions. He believed social memory to be an active and ongoing process because people remember on or forgot the past according to the needs of the present. Modern science denotes cultural and social roots of biographic memory. The work of Andrea Smarty and Chiara Fioretti is devoted to the problematics under consideration. The connection between social memory and ritual performance was studied by contemporary British archaeologist R. Peterson, who writes about archaeological evidence for the mechanism by which group memory is transferred. Ritual conceptual studies are presented in work of E. Durkheim, C. Jung, C. Levi-Strauss, E. Leach, M. Moss, V. Turner, R. Collins, J. Lotman, etc. E. Durkheim analyzed ritual functions as system organization. C. Jung proved that a ritual exists in unconscious human memory. In works of C. Levi-Strauss and E. Leach, a ritual is analyzed as a means of non-verbal communication, and the scientists revealed its communicative functions, which is considered to be basic for the formation of all the other functions as a ritual. The analysis of non-verbal information transfer in terms of a ritual carried out by E. Leach highlights the way A ritual transfer the message. The concept of a ritual presented in works of M. Moss, B. Malinowski, J. Lotman is connected with solution of an important social problem by means of the ritual. Ritual in social memory context. As far as social memory is general phenomenon and contains all kinds of the memory, the ritual analysis in its context allows revealing its nature to the full extent to achieve the objective. It is necessary to define the phenomena of ritual and social memory. Social memory is a complex of essential social reformation contained in social mentality and transferred from one generation to another. Ritual is a way of existence transferring from one generation and social stratum to another, allowing to deliver the essential content of social memory in a constantly changing state. One of the first scientists studying collectively memory was M. Halbwas. In his work, Social Memory Framework, he presents theoretical underpinning of both individual and collective memory existence. According to him, despite their close interrelation, collective memory is capable of turning around individual memory. However, it does not intermingle with them following its own laws. He devotes the whole chapter of the given book to mechanisms of memory formation and reconstruction of the past. He made the statement that our memory is not reproduction of the past experience, but its reconstruction. On the basis of the given statement, it is possible to assume that rituals of memory allow the society or a social group to implement such reconstruction. According to him, it is necessary to understand the viewpoint of the group transferred from the individual self, as well as to see how a certain fact becomes memorable while entering the range of a national interest. We memorize the event from our childhood when we realize others feel excited about it. Now, in the last, I would like to tell the conclusion. Thus, the basic concept of a ritual and the social memory study prove that by means of a ritual and individual identification with a certain social group and preserving temporal unity of dynamically developing society occur. Due to its dialectical nature, a ritual is capable of social memory essence, reflection. Ritual instability allows changing it from dialectically, retaining its content unvaried. A ritual preserves, presents, and keeps its content current, taking into account changing forms of manifestation that define the dynamics of society development. A ritual latently preserves the content of social memory and transmits its fundamental nature in a more important form for the given social medium. A ritual is interlocutory as it is capable of fulfilling the process of social communication between different individuals for definite consensus building. It contributes to existence within the social memory for a given society. Occasionality of the ritual serves to team or society and benefits from its involvement in an important event in the content of social memory. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to now hand over the mic to Dr. Sara Javed for her remarks and questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shiva Tiwari. It was indeed a nice presentation and something new which I've heard because, yes, I'm from a psychology background. Then, and right now, this is the first time I'm chairing a session of actually of the papers from English. So, yeah, I suppose the themes which are here, I'm sorry for the disturbance of my daughter, she's behind me. So the themes which I'm seeing over here are somehow like English and psychology have been combined. Okay, so you are talking about the concept which you are talking is like something which I might relate to psychology, that is social memory, right? Social memory in the context of rituals. So how rituals are being somehow they are the values and everything which are being carried in the form of social memory. So in psychology, there is this concept of collective unconsciousness. Like if you can relate or if you can add on to this paper, I think so it will be something, something new which you will come out with. This concept of collective unconsciousness is given by Jung. So Jung, he actually said the memory, like we carry on some of the memories from our ancestors. There are certain things which we, inherit from our ancestors. Like at times, which what happened, we visit some place and we say that I think I have been to this place, but actually in reality we haven't been there, right? But we suppose, right, we have that feeling. No, we have been here. Kuch dekha, kuch pehchana sa lag raha hai, right? So what is this? According to you, this is collective unconsciousness. somewhere our ancestors or somewhere some of this thing has been carried forward into us, through the form of collective unconscious, which I suppose is somewhere related to social memory. Because in social memory also we are actually carrying forward all those things. So like if you can add on to it, then I think so it will be something good or something unique which in your paper.
Sure, ma'am.
And apart from
Sure,
that, Mr. Tiwari, I just have a suggestion. Time try to make presentation or just try to prepare some slides or something while you're going, especially when you're going for all this online presentation. Okay, so in this way you'll be able to engage the audience more. Okay, so
Sure, ma'am.
yes,
Sure, ma'am.
it
Sure, ma'am.
was indeed a good presentation, and yeah, something nice, something unique which I came across. So just few this suggestion of mine. I think so if you will add on to it, if you will incorporate it, then it will be of more benefit. Okay.
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 Sure, ma'am. बहुत आपके सुझाव के लिए बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत आभार. धन्यवाद.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yes, Nausheen. We can proceed with the next presenter also.
Ma'am, just before we proceed, I would just
Yeah.
like to ask if the audience has any question. In case.
If anyone have any question, this open for discussion.
If anyone from the audience has any question, then you can unmute yourself and please go ahead and ask the question.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So, Mr. Tiwari, as you have mentioned, the advancement of social memory transfer techniques that can adapt to social change while keeping crucial information for society's development is crucial, right? So, could you please elaborate a bit more on this statement?
Mr. Tiwari, if you could please answer the question.
मैम एक बार क्वेश्चन रिपीट कर देंगे आप प्लीज.
Sure.
I said, as you have mentioned, the advancement of social memory transfer techniques that can adapt to societal change while keeping crucial information for society's development is crucial, right? So could you please elaborate on this statement?
Ma'am, participating in communal rituals actions helps people identify more personally with a particular social group. And as a result, through the process of social memory, a person gains assurance in the future and the significance of her or his genuine life. While modern society is becoming more ritualized, the process of globalization leads to the unification of rituals. And people attempt to use historical knowledge to explain social interaction, regulating behavioral practices.
Thank you, Mr. Tiwari. We'll now move on to the next. We'll now move on to the next presentation. Our next paper is titled Characterizing Trauma and Its Many Facets, a study of trauma's complexities, and will be presented by Yadla Pujita Reddy and Medida Vijay Hadasa from DSNLU.
Good afternoon. I'm Yadla Pujita and my co-author is Vijaya Hadasa. We are going to present a paper on characterization of trauma. We are from DSNLU, currently studying third year. Is it okay for me to present the PPT?
Yes, ma'am. Sure. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon once again. Me and my co-author has written a paper, has done a study upon characterizing trauma and its many facets. It's a general study of trauma complexities. So, uh, today we dwell on the complex and the profound phenomena of trauma. Trauma is a deeply and subjective and perspective experience that can have far-reaching consequences for individuals across different cultures and contexts. In our time together, we will explore the multifaceted nature of trauma, understanding its causes and the long-term effects. By gaining a comprehensive and understanding trauma, we can inform therapeutic interventions and support systems that provide effective care for those affected by the traumatic experiences. At its core, trauma refers to an individual's emotional response to a distressing or life-threatening event. This event could be happen in various forms such as natural disasters, accidents, violence, abuse, or sudden loss. What sets trauma apart from the other stressful experience is the profound disruption it causes, often leaving lasting imprints on individuals or individual lives. It is important to recognize that trauma can affect individuals of all age, from children to elderly, and its impacts can be both intimidate and enduring. To effectively address trauma, we must first seek the understanding its complexities. Characterizing trauma involves exploring its various facts, including causes and long-term effects. Uh, it is essential to acknowledge that trauma is a deeply subjective experience and it can affect person to person. What may be traumatic for one individual might not have the same effect to the another. Therefore, our understanding of trauma must be considered to the unique perspective and experience of those. Trauma manifests itself in various ways, affecting individuals on multiple levels. Psychologically, trauma can lead the development of post-traumatic stress disorder, characterizing by intuitive memories, nightmares, and hyperarousals. Dissociative disorder, anxiety, and depression are also commonly associated with the trauma. On a physical level, trauma can manifest as traumatic symptoms, impacting bodily sensations and overall well-being of an individual. Furthermore, trauma can be profound social and behavior impacts, contributing to the substance use, self-harming behavior, and challenging their personal relationships. Understanding these manifestations helps to inform therapeutic approaches that address the diverse effects of trauma. The cause of trauma are diverse and multifaced. Multifaced. Individual factors play a significant role, including the pre-existing vulnerability, past experiences, and psychological makeup. Environmental factors such as natural disasters, accidents, and political unrest contribute to the occurrence of traumatic events. Trauma experienced during the critical period of development, particularly in childhood, can lasting effects on an individual. Social culture factors, including cultural norms, values, and social system, as influence the cause and the experiences of trauma within different communities. It is crucial to understand that trauma is deeply subject to experience, and individuals may simultaneously experience multiple causes of trauma. By recognizing and comprehending the diverse cause of trauma, we can inform prevention efforts, promote reliances, and develop effective interventions and support system to cater the unique need of trauma survivors. By addressing these causes, we can work towards creating a safer and more supportive environment for individuals affected by trauma, which will be discussed by my co-author Vijaya Hadasa. Over to her.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be dealing with types of trauma and the awareness will be needed in present society. Understanding the different types of trauma is essential in recognizing the diverse ways in which trauma can affect individuals. Acute trauma refers to a single traumatic event that occurs within a relatively short time frame, while chronic trauma involves prolonged exposure to traumatic events or ongoing adverse circumstances. Complex trauma, also known as irrational or developmental trauma, arises from multiple and prolonged traumatic events within the context of interpersonal relationships. Secondary trauma, on the other hand, occurs through indirect exposure to trauma by witnessing or working with trauma survivors. Trauma can have long-term effects on individuals' physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. Post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorders, depression, substance abuse, relationship issues, physical health problems, and dissociative disorders are commonly associated with trauma. While not everyone who experiences trauma will develop long-term effects, recognizing and addressing these consequences is crucial in providing appropriate support and intervention. Trauma-informed intervention and support systems are vital for effectively addressing trauma. These approaches recognize the impact of trauma on individuals' lives and create safe and empowering environments for healing and recovery. Trauma-informed interventions prioritize safety, trust, collaboration, empowerment, and addressing the emotional and psychological impact of trauma. Ongoing education and training for professionals are also important to stay informed about the latest evidence-based practices. And coming to the awareness that had been needed, many individuals may not realize they have experienced trauma or understand how it has affected them. Raising awareness helps people recognize and acknowledge their traumatic experiences, which is the first step towards healing and seeking support. By spreading knowledge about trauma, its causes, and its effects, we can help dispel misconceptions and reduce stigma in society. People can learn that trauma can result from various sources such as violence, abuse, accident, or war. Understanding the impact of trauma can foster empathy and support for survivors. Awareness enables individuals to identify signs and symptoms of trauma in themselves and others. This knowledge can lead to early intervention and appropriate support, such as therapy, counseling, or trauma-informed care. Early intervention increases the chances of recovery and prevents further distress. When more people are aware of trauma, it helps create a supportive environment. Friends, family, and communities can provide understanding, compassion, and resources to individuals who have experienced trauma. This support system plays a crucial role in the healing process. Raising awareness about trauma can lead to changes in policies and systems also. It can help advocate for trauma-informed practices in healthcare, education, and other relevant sectors. By prioritizing trauma-informed approaches, institutions can create safer and more supportive environments for trauma survivors. Awareness about trauma can contribute to efforts in preventing traumatic experiences and reducing their trauma. It can foster a culture of safety, empathy, and resilience, promoting strategies such as conflict resolution, violence prevention, and mental health support. Overall, increasing awareness about trauma is essential for healing, reducing stigma, and creating supportive environments for individuals affected by trauma. It is a collective effort that involves education, empathy, and a commitment to prioritizing mental health and well-being. In conclusion, understanding and addressing trauma requires a multidimensional and compassionate approach. By characterizing trauma's complexities and implementing trauma-informed interventions, we can make a positive difference in the lives of trauma survivors. Through our collective efforts, we can create a safer and more supportive environment for individuals affected by trauma, fostering resilience and healing. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, Dr. Sarah.
Thank you, Yajla and Medida. It was a nice presentation, and yes, trauma is something which is actually, I will say, very prevalent nowadays, and trauma. One of the way of dealing with trauma, you said awareness. You talked about awareness. That awareness is something which, if people are aware of what trauma is, then they might help in dealing with it. So it's very necessary to actually pinpoint what trauma is in real sense. Like what you have talked about trauma, that is only better on the superficial level. Like if you go and see this DSM-5, that is Diagnostical and Statistical Manual, which we regard as a Bible of psychiatry, because that is the book with the help of which we come up with diagnosis of various disorders. So, you know, in DSM-5, there are various revisions which are being done in DSM. So, in DSM-5th, which is not the current DSM-5 TR, in DSM-5th, there is a specific chapter which is as trauma and stress-related disorders. So, all those disorders which comes under, which are actually where, with a crux, or where you can say the main point is trauma. All the disorders are clubbed under this chapter. So you will not believe there is this disorder which is a reactive attachment disorder. Reactive attachment disorder comes under trauma and stress related. The symptoms, or you, because see, in psychiatry we don't have any biomarkers, we don't have any, you know, specific things which by seeing at the reports we will say this is the reason. The only there's only signs and symptoms on the basis of which we can come to the diagnosis of a disorder. So in reactive attachment disorder, the child, he rarely, you know, or minimally seeks comfort from the caregiver. Why? Because the bond has not been formed between the main caregiver, the parents. You know, and this is a very burning topic these days, because we being parents are very much engrossed in, you know, are making our career and making you know, it's we also want to make a career. It's nothing bad, but the sufferer over here is the child. You know, the bond is not being created, which ultimately after a certain period of time ends him landing into this type of disorder. So, you know, you can add on to these things. You can actually consult DSM-5 and you can see what are the disorders which actually come under trauma and stress related thing chapter. There are many disorders. There are, you know, disinhibited social engagement disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. You have already mentioned. Dissociative disorder does not come under this thing. It is a different category. Yes, but you can see certain symptoms of dissociative disorders into this in trauma related disorders. So my suggestion is, if you can add on to these things, you know, when you will go through these disorders, you will also come to know that such beautiful interventions are for that. Cognitive behavior therapy is there, certain other interventions are there. So it will help you in adding to the interventions as well. Okay, that's my suggestion. Okay, that's all from my side.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable insight. Now, if the audience has any question, you can go ahead and ask, please. Okay, so we have one question from the audience. The question is, you spoke about the importance of trauma awareness. So according to you, how can you raise awareness regarding trauma?
Hello. Yeah. Mr. Sorry, Ashra, coming to your question, we can raise awareness by conducting education camps or encouraging open dialogue and create platforms for sharing personal stories to humanize the experiences of trauma, or provide training and resources to healthcare professionals, educators, and community members to enhance their ability to recognize and respond to trauma. Like foster trauma-informed care practices in various settings such as schools, workplaces, and healthcare facilities. And also we can establish supportive organizations and initiates that focus on trauma prevention, intervention, and advocating their problems.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your answer.
And just to add on to it, by actually attending such conferences and actually presenting such works and, you know, being more keen into such things, so you will get more insight into it. Okay, not only limit yourself to English conferences. Like, this is a multidisciplinary conference, like, so attending such workshops and conferences will definitely add on to it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, ma'am. We will now move on to the next presentation. Our next paper is titled, I Don't Understand Myself Well Either, Explorations of Memory and Trauma Through the Persona of August D. And our presenters for the paper are Prerna Athreya and Mridula Vijayarangakumar from Shivnadar Institute of Eminence. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Just a second. Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we will start soon. Hi, good afternoon. I, Prerna Athreya, with my co-author Mridula Vijayarangakumar, will be presenting our paper titled I Don't Know Myself Well Either, Explorations of Memory and Trauma Through the Persona of August D. August D is one of the names under which Suga, member of South Korean boy band BTS, releases music, and as this paper argues, understands his composite self as a result of three intersecting identities. Our paper attempts to trace the relationship between memory and trauma and show how they shape identity formation through the construction of the self. In so doing, it close reads the album trilogy of August D, spanning from 2016 to 2023, using it as a device to trace how Carl Jung's theories of the self, the persona, shadow, and ego, find reflections in the music of Suga and August D. Memory itself and how it operates as a site and manifestation of trauma is seen alongside the levels of the self, where the persona of August D falls in response to public and private memory and trauma, both socio-political and personal, are examined as well. Our paper understands memory as the key to unlocking trauma and how that in turn shapes the self. In so arguing, our paper proposes that memory is the way that the self records and processes trauma, and the recollections of the same as post-memory help the adult self process the original traumatic event. Memory thus becomes a tool by which trauma and the self can both be located and interpreted. Catherine Nelson argues that autobiographical memory operates as a subclass of episodic memories, referring to the self when viewed from a social interactionist standpoint, and our paper uses this theorization to make a parallel argument. Our analysis sees trauma itself as an episode, with how memories process the trauma and how the self expresses that episode autobiographically, revealing how the individual has organized the post-memory of the traumatic event. BTS's music is often more reflective of public tragedies and therefore public memory, and Suga's role within the band becomes as a social commentator. However, as August D, his drive is to express the other side of Suga and create its bridge to Min Yoongi's experiences. This will further be discussed in the next slide by my co-author. Literature and psychology have traveled hand in hand for decades now, with authors like Sylvia Plath and Virginia Woolf, amongst numerous others, being extremely open about their traumas and mental health challenges. Our paper attempts a similar analysis with an alternative gaze on literature by using music as a literary device. Within music too, we are looking at rap and hip-hop genres due to both the artist's expertise and also the socio-political origins of the genres themselves.
So who is August D? As mapped on the slide, there are three identities or three fragmented versions of the self, and each identity is derived from the other. It is not a linear chain, but rather a triangular cycle. Firstly, there is Min Yoongi, the person, or as Carl Jung describes it, the ego. Yoongi's life is outlined by personal experiences as enumerated on the slide. These are, of course, only those that he has chosen to make public during his career. The sixth experience in particular birthed Suga, his stage persona, the one who is a member of BTS and is recognized as a well-established producer. The name Suga comes from Min Yoongi's love for basketball, a combination of the words shooting guard, which is the position that he played in the sport. In Bohr and Carl Jung's theory, it is clear that Suga is the persona self. And finally, there's August D, birthed by all the other experiences he's been through, or rather, completely grounded in his trauma. The name is derived by reversing Suga and combining it with Min Yoongi's birthplace, Daegu Town. August D is his alter ego, the one who speaks plain and raw of his pain, anger, and fears in ways Suga cannot, due to the restrictions enforced by the Korean idol system. Essentially, Suga is always a representative of BTS wherever he goes, whereas August D is a manifestation of Jungi's trauma, or as Jung explains, the shadow. From the first mixtape, self-titled August D, our paper focuses primarily on three songs to understand how August D was introduced to society and how the audience was meant to perceive him. August D is the title track of the first mixtape, which introduces us to the shadow. The track is directed at the rest of the K-pop industry. especially his haters, explaining how while Suga is contained within the K-pop label of an idol, August D is not, and the category itself is not big enough for him. He says that only the strong ones can mess with him, which can be traced to the other two songs we see on the slide. The last, which is the seventh track on the mixtape, openly exposed Jungi's diagnosis of depression and OCD, how his parents reacted to it, and how August D processes it. 1453 at Dawn talks about Jungi's social anxiety, where he admits to having two masks that hide his true self. The masks in this case seem to be Suga and August D, while Jungi is his true self that he's hiding from the world. We can see here that Jungi is aware and conscious of the battle that he faces, thus exhibiting Jung's archetype of the ego. According to August D, Min Jungi is a weak self of him, implying that August D is in fact the stronger ego. August D also explains that Min Jungi is dead, and he is the one who killed Jungi. This can be seen as all of Jungi's darkest thoughts and trauma consuming him. Therefore, the shadow grows while repressing the ego.
This slide focuses in particular on how Jungi and August D marry Carl Jung's theorizations of the personality archetypes with a personal creative vision, particularly through Dechita and Hegel. Carl Jung sees the ruler personality as motivated to exercise control through authoritarian methods, with the biggest fear of being overthrown or challenged. The rebel, on the other hand, sees rules as meant to be broken, strategizing to disrupt and destroy with a penchant for criminal activity. The tussle between ruler and rebel is constant, and where Dechita and Hegel express this through different characters, Amygdala locates the entire conflict within Jungi himself, and the persona of August D is partially birthed as a result of this traumatic struggle. Dechita is set in a more ancient time, the Joseon dynasty, whereas Hegel is set in a mafia universe, both showcasing a corrupt leader killed by the local rebel. Through their employ of traditional Korean instrumentation and fast rap styles, both Dechita and Hegel come off as extremely harsh and vapid. Amygdala's decidedly more modern sound strips away the aggression and allows some of Suga and Jungi's softness to seep into August D, layering the angry character expressed through the two preceding mixtapes with vulnerability. Amygdala is chronologically the last song, but in Jungi's life journey, the self-inflicted scar is the inciting incident. In all of his personal and professional challenges, from health issues to selling his music copyrights for food, it is the motor accident and his crushed shoulder that prompt him to carve the scar over his eye. Amygdala shows a bloody, fresh wound which heals and fades into a pink line by the time of Hegel. This warped chronology of physical and mental trauma highlights that with time it becomes difficult to define the order of traumatic episodes. Using the monarchy and mafia universes, he speaks of how the K-pop industry functions, how BTS upset an established dynamic with their unexpected success, and how the industry is ultimately a slave to its self-created capitalist agendas.
Now we'll be exploring the trauma through the video of amygdala. The amygdala is an almond-shaped organ in the brain. It is involved in the processing of emotions and memories associated with fear, activating our fight or flight response. In the chorus of this song, Augustine begs for his amygdala to let him out, and he does not want to recall the trauma of his accident, his mother's heart surgery, or his father's liver cancer diagnosis. In the music video, this is demonstrated by expressing the amygdala as a room with a door, and Augustine is either unable to make it to the door, or even if he does, he's unable to open it, thus forever being caught in his past. The prominent refrain, "I don't know your name," shows the layered conflict between Jungi and Augustine. Augustine's existence is a manifestation of all the trauma which he's trying to protect Jungi from by locking them in the amygdala. But this is causing Jungi to lose his identity to Augustine because he's unable to process this trauma and therefore cannot overcome or understand it. Additionally, in the music video, Jungi is seen taking zolpidem tartrate, prescribed for insomnia. However, one of the common side effects is memory loss. And if the person doesn't sleep despite taking the medication, it induces hallucinations and night terrors. Thus, the music video explores in detail how trauma can cause holes in the person's memory and warp it. Jungi also displays the 5 stages of grief, with his ego experiencing denial and Augustine feeling the stages of anger, bargaining, and depression, capping off with Jungi's acceptance of his traumas.
In his other music, Suga as a rapper, lyricist, and producer takes center stage, alternating in how his self is expressed individually and in relation to his collaborators, showing that Suga cannot completely let go of the traumas that Augustine inhabits. In his collaborations with K-pop idol IU, he refers to love as a sandcastle doomed to crumble and as conditional, illustrating that love and people are interchangeable and that life itself is determined by how one responds in the relationships with those around them. Anger here makes way for vulnerable and soft rap, with the occasional singer shining through. These musical choices illustrate that while rap allows the expression of angst, it is ultimately the evocation of trauma through softness that heals the self that is plagued by post-memory. BTS's songs see Suga locating his trauma within his role in the band and also his place in the industry, pressure on their shoulders, and the sense of duty that they are all imbued with. He speaks of responsibility in the face of anxiety and their desire to give up and clinging on to hope in the face of despair. Viewing Suga's role in critiquing and criticizing as a trauma response helps to understand his artistry more fully.
Ultimately, while Jungi seems to have begun his mixtapes with the idea that Minyungi, Suga, and August D are all separate entities, over the course of working on the trilogy, as shown in the interview experts in the slide, he has accepted that both Suga and August D are a part of him, and that all three names he goes by are one and the same. This could thus be taken as a sign that the ego, persona, and shadow, as we've explored in the previous slides, have attained a balance and thus undergone what Carl Jung defines as the individuation, how the individual becomes determined as a combination of the intersections of all the layers of the self. So, in conclusion,
Ms. Mridula? Yes, ma'am. It was just a gentle reminder that you have 2 minutes left for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. So in conclusion, Agastdi's album trilogy acts as a device bridging the memories of Suga and Minyungi, thereby becoming a site for the intersection of all fragmented identities. The trilogy demonstrates how trauma and memory construct multiple archetypes that negotiate with each other to construct a complex self. And finally, the personal and public spheres can be examples of trauma responses, as we've already examined through the interviewing lyrics of Suga and Agastdi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mridula and Prerna, that was an insightful presentation which you people have presented. Well done. And this is something unique and something new which I've come across. And just a personal suggestion for you people is go for publication. I'm sure you will get good journals for this thing, because this is something new, and BTS in this form, I will never imagine this thing. Yeah, apart from that, why don't you, like, you have taken one set of people, why don't you compare it with different other, groups, and just because overall, when you want to, because see, this is something like the lyrics which you are telling, because art is something which we also use in a form of therapy. We see music is there, which is used in a form of therapy. Art is a broader term, and music therapy, dance therapy, play therapy, drawing, everything comes under that art therapy. Art is an umbrella term. So basically by this, you can, because we can see the fan following going on for these people. So with similar other groups, you can do a comparative analysis, which you have done over here. That will add more weightage to it, because this is something unique I came across this time. And I'm sure, first of all, go for this publication. I'm sure it will be published in a very reputed journal. And along with it, go for this comparative thing also, which will be an additional input to it. Okay? That was a very insightful one. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you so much for your comments. It really means a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. We have a question from Varisha Ahmed. She asks that how important do you think is the interdisciplinary study and research on trauma? Instead of looking at trauma from only a psychological perspective, do you think it is necessary to involve an all-encompassing approach to trauma studies?
Mridula, do you want to take it or should I go?
I mean, you can go ahead.
Okay, so I think that if this was not an interdisciplinary conference, I don't think we would have ever written this paper. Neither of us are psychology students. I think we should start there with our background. I'm an English major with a minor in sociology, and Mridula is an eco and finance major with an English minor. So I don't think we can not answer this question in terms of we wouldn't have been able to write this paper. And even speaking to this, like, we got the schedule from RLF yesterday, the society, and we were a little bit confused at the fact that our paper was classified under psychology. We were expecting it to be with literature, and in going through the few papers that we've already heard so far, we've already spoken of Jung, and before our paper already, and the next question is talking about shadow work. So it's a very composite idea, things like this, and using music as literature, then taking literature to talk about psychology, it creates a very interesting mix. I can't think of better word for it, and a very fascinating way that something that has been spoken about through the decades can be interpreted. And as ma'am is mentioning that she feels that she's not heard something like this before, and I think interdisciplinary approach is very important to study everything, but of course this conference is on trauma, so yeah.
The problem to it is that like me being from psychology background, we go in conferences which are particularly for psychology, right? Most ज़्यादा किसमें चले जाएंगे, psychiatry वाले में चले जाएंगे, social work में चले जाएंगे, sociology वाले में चले जाएंगे. But this is a new approach which has been taken by English Department Raleigh Society, and this is something new and which is actually need of the hour. We need this collaborative thing. Like you are saying that instead of looking at trauma from only of the psychological perspective, let me tell you one thing. When we are looking at any of the disorder, so what we take into consideration, we actually follow biopsychosocial approach. Biopsychosocial approach is like we will take into consideration the biological aspect also, like what are the chemical changes, what are the this post-traumatic disorder. There are certain neurotransmitter, there are certain hormonal changes, there are certain dopamine releases and all of these things which actually affect in this post-traumatic disorder also. So we have to take into consideration the biological approach. Apart from that, psychological aspect is also like you have been seeing that how memory, how cognition, how your personal experiences, all of these things are being somehow being affected, and social aspect also. So at least these three aspects, when you are saying that not only from psychological perspective, like what can be the other perspective, you come up with it. You come up. Like, what do you think? कौन से other aspects हो सकते हैं which we can take into consideration while and not only the psychological perspective. Like, who's this person? Varisha, yeah. What do you mean? Instead of looking, it's just a query from my side also. Apart from psychological perspective, what do you think? Like, what other perspectives should we take into consideration? Okay, might be you can get to me after this thing, and we can proceed up with next this thing. And I hope Tanvi Sharma, your this thing has been answered by Prerna and Deborah. It has been addressed, Tanvi?
No, we didn't.
Are you satisfied?
We didn't answer Tanvi's question. We just answered Varisha's question.
Okay, Tanvi. Come up to the Tanvi.
Yeah, I'll try to wrap up as quickly as possible. Tanvi, thank you for your question. I think it's a very important question. It's something that I did think about when we were putting the presentation together in terms of, are we limiting what we are saying in terms of trauma? I think our goal here was to show how one artist in particular is talking about his trauma, how he has processed it, and how he has presented it both to himself, and how he's intellectualized it, academized it, and obviously commodified it, and how it has become a public property in that sense. So we're not trying to minimize trauma. I don't think that was our goal, and we're very sorry if that's how it came across. But it's one way, I think, that the shadow self helps to unlock trauma, is to see where your trauma is located, in which part of yourself, and how is that affecting every part of your life, and how then do you move forward in that capacity. So I think that was our goal. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers. Thank you, ma'am, for your insights. We'll now move on to our next presentation. Next presenter for the session is Tanvi Sharma from Lady Shri Ram College, who will be presenting her paper titled Construction of Narrative in Art and Craft, a Graceful Remembrance or a Transgressing Reminder of the Past. Over to you.
I'll take a minute.
Before I start, can you check if you can hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. So I'll just present the whole screen. Give me one. Yes. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanvi Sharma, and before I start my presentation, I'll be asking some rhetorical questions. So, have you ever found objects at your home that lead to a gush of memories? What type of objects would you say are heavily embedded with emotional value? And say those things are that are emotionally embedded, are things that you made yourself or did you purchase it from somewhere? So for some of us, the crafted object is a persuasive reminder of traditional skills and values that can become lost in a culture of slick technology and mass consumption. But in today's presentation, I'd like to sketch it for you from another angle, that is, as an intimate dialogue born from girlhood memories and inherited wisdom. And thus, the name of my topic is Construction of Narrative in Art and Craft, a graceful remembrance or a transgressive reminder of the past. I'll keep it like this. Yeah. So the major themes I'll be exploring are medium of intimate language that affects everyone on a profound level, role of memory in construction of narrative, exposing the impact of the object on the self in public, objectivity in traumatic narrative. So there's an intimacy in craft materials and techniques that make them persuasive tools, evocative of memories in most people who can recall a grandmother who crocheted and told stories while grandchildren sat at her feet on threadbare rugs. So did you all ever notice that the allure of the craft object often lies in its familiarity and power to evoke memory and emotion through the personal association it carries? As part of our everyday existence, we can relate to it on a very intimate level. Intimacy is also enacted by the sensory quality of the materials. I'll now be talking about how past being prompted through materials, mediums of memory, and one of main philosopher is Marcel Proust, who claims that our senses can unlock memory, taste, and smell, bear in the tiny and most impalpable drops of the essence, the vast structure of recollection. Many of the materials used in artworks like this have a very lush quality, be it visual, tactile, or olfactory. The silken feel of fur or fabric, or the provocative aroma of honey, roses, or fruits. These are valued for its capacity to connect the past to the present, allowing the artist to communicate personal truths to an audience and connecting private and the public spheres. To give you a more personal account, I'll be presenting some pictures of crafts that my grandmother, my mother, and sister used to occupy their time with. These are as follows. First is a crochet embroidery. The second is needlework on tablecloth. Third is again tablecloth, but with flower motifs painted on it using fabric paint. The fourth is knitted wool caps. Fifth one is aluminium metal sheet beading. And the last, again, knitted wool caps, but for small children. So given their sensuality, these materials are inherently intimate and autobiographical, hinting at a wealth of history and evoking personal significance and recollection. The repetitive motion of craft techniques evokes the rhythm of the body, the gentle rise and fall of the chest, the ebb and flow of blood, and the cycling thud of a pulse. On availing these pictures of craft from my mother, she explained to me how the ritualistic repetition of stitches and knots provided her a soothing and meditative pathway. This discussion led to her reflect on her instinctual memories, allowing her an inner dialogue which she could then extricate as an outward narrative. As one of her most crucial senses, memory plays an important role in the inception and reception of work, which exploits the kind of memory Proust referred to as involuntary memory, which I explained earlier. Proust also considered memory as an emotional rather than intellectual activity and as an important element of inner self. He considered involuntary memory to be spontaneous recall, evoking an emotional consciousness that surpasses the intellect. Proust valued involuntary memory for its capacity to connect past and present, which I had talked about earlier. So, putting this more simply, we can experience emotional highs and lows as a result of memory. It can be tempered for public consumption or left unconstrained for private enjoyment. It sneaks up on us when we are sleeping or shows up through our senses. It arises by our senses, tacit or in unspoken ways, explicit or plain, and it's space between forgetting and remembering, repression and recollection. So it is no surprise that the ambiguous characteristics and marginal position of memory make it highly attractive to the artist. Again, these are some artworks done by my mother and grandmother. Material is sensual and conjures sensorial memories because it can be touched, it has an odor, it keeps a memory of the gesture of the hands that have cut and sewn. This is by Jeffries. Many of these objects and materials carry the scars and blemishes of time and year. This well-known quality alludes to a time that has passed and established the connection between object and memory. Similarly, for me, the hunt became the part of the pleasure of writing this research paper, which I'll be writing. And as I became aware of the unspoken narratives I was unearthing, it made me wonder exactly who were the women who crocheted these doilies, embellished these handkerchiefs, knitted dresses for Barbies, who were the kids who wore these knitted caps, or who were the tiny hands that filled the kid gloves, and who were the histories intimated by the marks and scuffs of time. Circling back to what I asked in the starting, searching for an object becomes an addictive and immersive pursuit. What motivates one is the hunt, to connect with a thing, knowing that you have found that thing when it positions you in a memory and creates some commonality relating to one's own experience. Once the object is found, connections are identified between the concept and object to then gather loose threads to weave into a narrative. In a way, I would like to liken it to a maternal instinct of nesting. Naomi Segal suggests that the most simple object will cease to be banal as it becomes marked by personal attachment. Following Proust's theory that memories can be revived by objects of the simplest and least lyrical type because such ordinary material trappings of our everyday reality. And Segal suggests it is because objects are so simple and everyday that they strike so forcibly with a particular poignancy. Even Bruto Latour and Donna Harvey grant agency to objects as semiotic performers able to take an active part in communication. So the commonplace objects, many would consider mundane. And Vinala, the things I consider honorable and poignant, laden with meaning and merit. Then I introduced the philosopher Henry Bergson, who said that memory can be defined as the interface between mind and matter. His reference to the matter here is crucial, for it alludes to the object and its link to memory. By creating the memory work, the artist has the opportunity to bridge the gap between the artist and viewer, self and public. One of the American documentary photographer, Alex Scott, responded. He made a photograph of his own mother, a portrait stretched out on a sofa. As you can see beneath a wall of family portraits, one of which shows him as a young boy grinning and clasping a ball. He says that 20 years have passed and so much has changed, but the boy and the way he looks at his mother are pretty much the same. He further explains that the older he gets, the more he thinks that every photograph has an aura of death. The irony about the selection is that his mom is still alive, and nonetheless, whenever he looks at the picture now, is what I see is the approaching death, and not just for her, him, I'm sorry. And we know that without reservation, seeing this picture would connect us with a memory of our own mothers or grandmothers. At least for me, it conveys me the dark enclosure of my grandmother's room, the quilt that smells of home, the sniff of incense at the entrance, or the tired scent of henna and sindoor, and the smell of garlic in my mother's dupatta in a similar fashion. I give you another example. Here, the threads of gathering threads of memory, I implicate to various facets of memories that we link together to form a narrative. And I give a narrative now of a young girl making the dress herself and the subsequent reminders it brings, which can evoke a profound sense of intimacy. Let's take a hypothetical story of a girl.
Excuse me, Ms. Tanvi.
Yes.
A gentle reminder that you have 2 minutes left to wind up your presentation. Thank you.
So let's take a young girl named Sarah, who in her adolescent years created a dress with her own hands. The dress became a cherished possession, carrying within the weight of 2 distinct reminders. The first reminder fills her heart with nostalgia, transporting her back to the days of carefree youth. And furthermore, it also highlights a time where she could dress however much she liked, and it touches upon the intimacy of personal expression, the self-discovery that comes with exploring one's individual style during adolescence. I took this example because it offers us a glimpse into complex emotions and vulnerabilities of the protagonist. Here, the relation between self and object remains a personal one, and concordance between them allows for aesthetic appreciation. But how do we know how close the narrative of story is integrated into the main character? How can one establish an objective sense of one's lived experience while engaging with the narrative on a personal level? I ask these questions because emotional experience vicariously may dysregulate one's capacity to have healthy coping mechanisms, or some values learned by our parents in the process of self-preservation can be internalized by us while they're giving us a personal account of an incident in their to their children. So once again, how do we approach these sets of memory that would permanently have an impact on how our narrative is formed? Here, cycling distance comes to the rescue. It tells us how close the narrator is to the main story. By extension, how reader feels close to the main character, or how close a point of view is. Is it too distant? It is too close. And how does one decide the point? The further you can go is where you begin. And if you start close, you can't really go more distant. The issue that might come is that narrative has its own voice, however distant the long shot version of one's account is. Also, if it gets too distant, it can be a third-person POV. Gets too close, it can be more subjective. I would like to end on that note only, so that it makes you think how different voices and the narrators and the characters combine to make a narrative. So you can think about that, and which I'll be answering in the research paper itself. Till now, I've made it clear that art and craft examples I showed are not literal depictions of past events, but suggest emotions associated with those events. The viewer is confronted by a series of dramas that play out within the domestic space. They're invited to experience the work from within an index of stored memories. Additionally, seduced by the instinctual sensuality that mind differs as the body remembers sights, smells, and texture, the viewer brings to the work their own sets of experiences, in turn of becoming the biographer who takes the final steps in concluding the story. If one, but any aspect of my example transported you, the audience, to some place, event, or memory, then I deem the example successful. And then you as a viewer is rewarded by the willingness to enter into a dialogue with the artwork. With today's presentation, I aim to provide a greater understanding of the interconnected roles of object, material, memory, artist, and viewer, the construction of meaning and narrative, and most importantly, how a narrative can take a conscious approach towards explicating their lived experience. This has allowed me to formulate visual dialogue that centers on artist negotiation of various boundaries and polarized binaries, and allowing me to negotiate the position from a status. Yeah, I'm done. Thank you so much.
Yeah, actually, we are running out of time. So.
No, I understand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanvi. Thank you. You actually took me back to my childhood days, to that art and craft class which we used to do. And we used to, we have also made these handkerchiefs and these knitted things. It was there in our school as well. So you actually took me back. And, this is the power of memory. This is the power of memory. It has that power to take us back. And for this reason, let me tell you, memory, the things which you said, that yes, they have this power of taking us back, the objects, the smell, and the touch, everything. It has that encapsulating power to take us back to that time where it actually originated. So with this concept, there is a type of therapy. Me being a mental health professional, I actually will talk about that only. There is a therapy which is called reminiscence therapy. And this therapy is used for Alzheimer's patient. Alzheimer, it's a type of disease in which the problem of memory, like the people forgets, especially it is seen in oldies, like you must be having a nani datis, जिनको भूलने की प्रॉब्लम हो जाती है, राइट? दे अनेबल टू रिकॉल कि सुबह नाश्ता किया कि नहीं किया, दोपहर में खाना खाया कि नहीं खाया. In fact, at the initial stage, they actually forget recalling the names of the people. वो देख के नाम नहीं रिकॉल कर पाएंगे. So this is a disease which is actually Alzheimer, which is of different types. So for curing Alzheimer, though Alzheimer till now there is no cure for Alzheimer, it's a progressive disease. A lot of researches are going on, but the thing which we can do is we can slow down the progress of this disease. So for this we have reminiscence therapy. In reminiscence therapy, what we use is photographs of those times, especially if they are lucky enough to have photographs of their young time, of their childhood time, because our memory is in stages. It's like sensory, short-term and long-term memory. So long-term memory is the space where the decay takes place at the end. सबसे last जो decay होता है वो long-term memory में होता है. सबसे लंबा storage आपका long-term memory में होता है. So in Alzheimer also, the person regresses back to childhood. Like in the last stage of Alzheimer, the person will start behaving like a child. He's unable to speak. He's unable to eat in the later stage of Alzheimer's. So at that stage, reminiscence therapy will not work. But in the earlier phases, we can use reminiscence therapy. We have aromatherapy. If we have that smell, if we have that ether or that perfume, we can actually make them smell. So they will be able to recall, oh, it's of that person. So it actually helps them remembering back. Okay, so yeah, this thing actually provided, it was a very thoughtful presentation of yours, and it was a very good attempt by you, Tanvi. And we actually use it in our therapeutical part, so we actually know the significance of it. And yes, the house is open for discussion. That's all from my side. Thank you, Tanvi.
Really appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. I would now humbly request Ms. Jasmine to please unmute yourself if you're present. Okay, so we have now come to the end of our presentations for this session. I would like to now invite Dr. Sara Javed to please give her few remarks. Over to
Can you just give me a minute, please? Just a minute, okay?
Sure.
Just a
Yes.
minute. Yes, Nosheen, I'm back. Okay, so I suppose we had, there was only Jasmine was unable to present, and we had this Tanvi Sharma. She talked about construction of narrative in arts and craft, and then Indra Dhawan Tiwari, he talked about rituals as an instrument of imparting social memory context. Then we had Yadla and Medida, who talked about characterizing trauma and its many facets. And we also we saw that Prerna and Meridula, they talked about I don't understand myself well either, and they actually try to explore the memory and trauma through the persona of Augustine. So yes, the very something new and required initiative which has been taken by Raleigh Society of English Department, and I congratulate you all for this thing, and the way you people are planning and the way you are coming up with new ideas, because I see those posters on and off when I go to the faculty. So it's really appreciating, and I appreciate your efforts. And we saw that how from different diverse from how psychology, actually we saw that how psychology is there in every aspect, in every of the paper which we have discussed. And I always say this to my student, that psychology is everywhere. It's everywhere. You will see it in everywhere. You will see in any discipline you will study. So I often used to wonder, like, how come in English, how we can relate psychology in English? But then I read about the psychoanalysis Freud concept which you people study, and with Jung concept which you people are studying. So we see that how we see that how it's there, present everywhere. So basically, it was a very good efforts by you all and all the presenters, let me say, not one only one. Every presenters, they came up with very diverse ideas, and they presented it in a very beautiful manner. I appreciate the efforts, especially at UG and PG level. At UG and PG level, if you people are having this insight and you people are doing so much of efforts, then I'm sure that when you people will reach into this thing research, then what you people will do. So congratulations to everyone, congratulations to all the presenters, congratulations to the Raleigh Society, congratulations to the secretary, to Nausheen, and all the other members of the society. And I hope such initiatives are on and off taken by you people. And that's all from my side. Thank you, Nausheen.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. I would like to thank our esteemed chair, Dr. Sara Javed, for joining us and engaging in each and every presentation and providing us with such valuable insights, which I'm sure would have been was a very necessary step and a good initiative that we to have you here. We are very honored to have you present here today, ma'am, and the points that you gave us.
This was
Thank
a good.
you for that,
This is some. I just want to add on to it. Like, and many of the sessions I have chaired, we only get at the end of the presentation, we are asked to give our feedback. But your secretary, he instructed me, like, ma'am, we want feedback after every presentation. So I was like, if you will give us time, then I will definitely give you feedback. So this was a nice effort, and you people should carry it forward. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lastly, I would like to thank the presenters and all the participants in the meeting for joining us. We hope to see you all in the upcoming sessions as well. Thank you so much.